So مرحبا بكم الناس الكل. For those of you who doesn't know me, أنا إيمان مصمودي. So GDS lead بتاع need, and we're gonna be talking about design thinking for entrepreneurs. So what is design thinking? The understanding your audience, identifying their challenges, craft and test your solutions. What is design thinking? So design thinking is a creative problem-solving process that focuses on a user-centered approach to create solutions that is technologically and economically feasible. So it's a whole strategy to solve problems. It is user-centered. So باش نركزوا برشا على user experience والuser شنو رايه في الحكاية، الفيدباك متاع اليوزر. فما 5 phases. We start with empathize, then define, then ideate, then prototype, then test. We'll be talking about them. So starting with empathize. Empathize stands for connecting with the user's story, emotions, and having insights about them. It's more like تحط روحك in their shoe. like تحاول مثلا تفهمهم أكثر. So inspire new thinking by discovering what people really need. Of course وقتها تولي لازمك first you select an audience. فما few examples like مثلا busy professionals ولا after school teachers ولا parents with young children. So وقتها we can use Google Docs مثلا to write down a list of at least 5 challenges that they face. So let's say I'm a busy professional. شنو ما challenges اللي I would encounter؟ وقتها maybe one of the easiest things تكون أنه مثلا نمشي نحكي مع busy professionals. Well, they are busy. Try to talk to them. ولا مثلا if you are مثلا parents with young children, إذا كان you actually remember مثلا your parents struggle وقت اللي you were young, that could help you reflect on your memory مثلا, and that's empathizing. Next phase would be define. So في البارتي متاع emphasize نحاولوا نطلعوا بها البروبلمز متاع category معينة متاع people, and then we define. So define the problem, analyze your observations about the user and synthesize them to define the core problems you have identified as a problem statement. So هنا باش نحكي على problem statement, and that's very very important statement. اللي هي هذه. So Sam is a busy manager who needs a way to integrate healthy eating habits because he doesn't want to feel like he's on a diet. الفريز هذه it's actually well structured وتنجم توصلنا لبلاصة سمحة بالنسبة brainstorming in general. So username, that's not very important. So is a the characteristics. So هكما البيبل الكل مثلا busy managers in general, what does they actually need؟ شنو need اللي عندهم problem ولا حاجة؟ So they need to integrate a healthy eating habit. Why? Because they doesn't really feel like they're on a diet. So they want a way باش ياكلوا healthy في نفس الوقت ما يحسوش بروحهم قاعدين like حاجة strict برشا ولا تحب لها برشا energy خاطر ما يجبوش they're busy. وقتها we can start thinking and ideating later on. Synthesize a problem statement that clearly defines your goal. So define as a problem statement in a human-centered manner. Example, username is a user character. Needs user need because وقتها عندك الانسايتس نتاع النيد هذا. I'm going so fast by the way. We're gonna be going in depth بعديك مع Mr. أنيس إن شاء الله. So لأن باش نمشيو للفيز نتاع ideate. This phase is about solution challenge. We challenge you to find solutions. لهنا we need to... Okay, this is where you engage in unfiltered understanding, unrestrained brainstorming. Solutions. First, don't limit yourself to any idea تخطر ببالك. Don't worry about it right now. Just write it down. ومن أهم الحاجات باش تجم you clear your mind في حكاية معينة, it's to write down things. مهما يكونوا I don't know like words اللي ممكن you get them, they make meaning to you. Write them down, بعديك develop them شوي بشوي. In this phase, you can use Google Docs or a sheet of paper to write down 8 possible solutions to solve the problem statement you created. So بعد ما تركح audience متاعك, you empathize with them وتعرف شنو هي problems متاعهم. بعديك you define شنو هي problems اللي باش تخدم عليهم, تحضر problem statement متاعك, وقتها you start looking for, let's say, 8 possible solutions. ويجمو يكونوا ماهمش feasible. Don't worry about that part now. So any idea or solution that comes to mind is welcome. هذه الفيز متاع ال ideate. بعدين باش نشوف البروتوتايب. So the prototype, our goal is to draw out a draft of what is possible, or draw out or craft what is possible. Keeping in mind your minimum viable product. So نحن باش نبداو نحكيو على MVP, minimum viable product. So بالنسبة للبارتي بتاع ال MVP, كيف يكون عندك really big project فهمني. Let's say Facebook مثلا. Facebook, it solved so many problems في ال communication مثلا, between people, communicating yourself to people, maybe posting. So primary functions بتاع ال Facebook هو أنك you post something so that people can see what you write. وفي نفس الوقت you can follow people, تنفيديهم ولا عن friends, stuff like that. You follow each other. شوي بشوية تزيدوا functionalities أخرين كيما الماسنجر, كيما برشا فازات هكوما متاع مثلا فيسبوك ولا الواتش تنجم ترى فيديو. So أنا to be honest I'm not checking إذا كان فهم messages. Hello Denise. Back. So yeah, برتي هدية is وقت اللي تكون عندك idea just like Facebook, تكون idea بالرسم كبيرة. Start with an MVP, minimum viable product, اللي هو فيه primary function متاع idea متاعك. خاطر you can't do everything at once. You should start with the primary function and then build your way up بشوي. So في prototyping باش تخرج premier prototype لازم يكون MVP باش في ساعة تخرجه, خاطر بالميثودولوجي اجيل وسكروم وكل شيء انت حاجتك في حاجة اللي هي تنجم تخرجها للسوق في ساعة. عليه خاطر فما استراتيجي كاملة actually about that says أنه مش لازم تكون حاجة كاملة دو أ جوسكا زد معناتها بخفي مش نورمال باش تخرجها لليوزر. بالعكس, جوست ماذا بيك حاجة تمشي تعطيها لليوزر وتاخذ الفيدباك متاعه و you build your way up بشوي. and that's how you win them. They see improvement وقتها they believe in you. ماهيش حاجة خايبة أنه ما تكونش حاجة perfect كومبليت على الاخر. يعني ديجا الفيسبوك اول ما خرج موش الفيسبوك اللي تعرفوه تو يعني, وكان فما ناس حبته من الاول وزادوا حبوه اكثر مع كل ابديت. So you see, don't limit yourself وابدأوا بشوي. That's one example I really like about MVP. So MVP ماهوش الاكزامبل الاول, MVP هو الاكزامبل الثاني. And there's a difference between them. So إذا كانك تحب الاوتبوت الكهرباء الويه ما باش تمشي من بلاصة A لبلاصة B. ما تبداش بعجلة, ابدا بحكاية like crawler, بعديك بشوي تولي تروتينات, بعديك تولي بسكلة, بعديك تولي موتور, بعديك تولي كهرباء. Not the first example. That's why ماذا بينا نبداو MVP. We build our way up. We نوصلوا للفاينل product. Always do updates. So build rough prototypes to learn how to make ideas better. pick one of your feasible ideas and flesh out how you would build the solution. لهنا think about the technology needed, the time required, the money needed of course, the resources اللي عندك, resources اللي باش تستحقهم soon, etc. So فهم برشا حاجات بدك تخمم فيهم في البارتي هذه متاع prototyping. And the final phase would be test. But let's not say final, خاطر هذه باش تولي تدخل في سيكل كبير، خاطر باش تعمل MVP، بعديك باش تستي، بعديك باش يولي عندك فيدباك، باش تعاود تعمل فيرسيون أخرى، باش تعاود تستي، باش تعاود تاخذ فيدباك، and it goes. It never ends. It shouldn't end, in fact, I think. So when it comes to testing your goal is to test the complete product using the best solutions I identified during the prototyping phase, refine and alert as needed. This is an iterative process. So what is an iterative process? البارتي هذيك متاع test you could say prototype. iterate, test, learn, iterate and repeat. You test, learn. You learn through feedback. بالنسبة resources, what I would advise, like I would have done on any kind of project, from a primer, it's an app. It gives you great advices. بالنسبة لل it's practical, personalized, تعطيك tips for building a successful website مثلا. تعطيكم برشا tips عن محنو. It's very advisable عنكم صبا. And yeah, فما grow with Google. فيها برشا free virtual workshops and they can enhance your digital skills, and of course you will grow your business with it. And yeah, that would be my first like دورة في صعب design thinking, and thank you. Grow with Google, yay. Do you have any questions for part here? So we're 20 now. I see from a few people joined later on. Yeah, hello. So hello. Throughout the whole meeting إن شاء الله إذا كان عندكم any kind of question مثلا تنجموا تكتبوهم في البارتي متاع Q&A. كي موجودة الفوق كي تنزل على الشات فما general فما Q&A فما DMs direct messages. تنجموا تكتبوا questions. We'll try to answer them في آخر السيانس إن شاء الله. Meanwhile من هالي يجي Mr. Anas. I actually would like to give you some insights on very interesting things اللي باش يجيو بريدجي. So as some of you may know فما solution challenge اللي هي Google competition اللي حطتها للGDSCs. شاركوا فيها solution ideas في نفس الوقت لازم نحضروا prototypes. One iteration is enough. So مش باش تكون vraiment كل حاجة ديفلوبيها بالآخر. It's totally doable. We have great potential by the way في الكلام بتاعنا. So I really am looking forward to what you're gonna come up with. حابكم كلكم شو تعملوا registration. بالنسبة للناس اللي ما زالت ما عملت registration, اللي interested ويحب like يخدم project seriously, you can contact me. باش ندخلوا في project department خاطر البريد الجاي إن شاء الله باش نعملوا series of workshops. It's about design sprint. So stay tuned. Other than that, this weekend inshallah, so فما the fest مع جديجي قرطاج. Some of you may have seen that already. Fama very amazing workshops. I can actually name some. So let me see. One sec, and I'll name a few of them. So Mr. Anas is on his way. There we go. So نهار السبت إن شاء الله باش يكون عنا workshop على Google Cloud / Artificial Intelligence مع مستر موفق. We're gonna be having another workshop. It's Intro to AI من الساعتين 3:30 with أحمد شيخ روح. Mr. أحمد شيخ روح. Yeah. So Mr. أحمد شيخ روح يخدم في لاستيف. Stay tuned. بالنسبة لنهار الأحد باش يكون عنا workshop على Angular with Mr. أحمد نفاتي 10 متاع الصباح من 10 ل 11:30. And then باش يكون عنا workshop على Flutter with Mr. محمد جياد بن حسن. And after that باش يكون عنا workshop بعد ساعة ونص ل3 about UX UI with Miss نهى جعفر من UXers. Yeah, so you can register yeah, online. So registration is already opened. Hello, Mr. Anas. So you can find the event on our webpage. Let's refresh it now. I'll give you host abilities. Mr. Anas, I think if you refresh the page and then they got your access, normal it asks for access. maybe check إذا كان عندنا الأكسس من فوق ميكرو كاميرا. refresh. So presenter mode is on. It's just لازم تعطيها access I think من PC. I'm not seeing the chat. I can't unmute for some reason. I tried. Yes, Kevin. Mr. Anas, if you refresh everything like that تدخل الويب سايت ما تجيك فازة على الجنب هكا تقول لك presenter ولا حاجة كيما هكا باش تعطيها access. access. That's true. Right. Mustafa said that you can test the mic and cam before joining the meet. That helped me diagnose this kind of problems. I see you. Okay.
Okay. We're getting somewhere. One
But I see a
second.
mic and it's open. I
Yeah.
just don't hear anything.
Oh, you don't hear me? Microphone. Can you hear me now?
Okay. المايك ولا blue? I think there is a voice, but I can't hear anything. That's weird.
Okay. Can you see me now? Okay, so
Okay, the
we're
video is
getting
on.
somewhere.
I can't
Yeah.
hear you. It's weird.
Mute.
But guys, فما شكون يسمع في students? Or is it just me? Oh, maybe
It's
it's
you. Oh
just
my
me.
god.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Mm. Okay, one second. Let me set it up.
Hear you now.
Yeah.
أنا كنت حاسة باسمه
Okay.
بس.
صباح الخير.
No, Mr. Anas.
Okay, so first of all, sorry for the delay, guys, because I really got caught up in something. I'm so happy to be invited and to be part of the event. Always a pleasure to do design thinking workshops for me. Of course, I would love to know more about the context of this workshop specifically. Let's do that really quickly since we already lost like some a bit of time. I will introduce myself really quickly, then let you, Iman or anyone who wanna give me more context to go through. So I'm Anas Tradi. I'm a senior UI UX designer and user experience instructor. So I have been doing design for probably 11, 12 years, but I've been specifically specializing in user experience and product design for the past 6 years. So I've been working for numerous startups, numerous companies, mostly abroad of Tunisia. I haven't been working with Tunisian clients for several reasons, but still, um, I think I got a really diverse experiences with the MENA region countries, also with big clients in Europe. So the most important one for me is my current experience. Actually, is my reference point working with MediaMarkt Saturn, which is the number one retail seller in the entire Europe. So it's a really big reference for me, and it's something that allowed me actually to discover more the impact of problem solving on an actual functional product where mistakes can cost you millions in seconds. Like really, it's really critical to know exactly what you're doing. So that's why I try to give more of design thinking workshops on a functional way. So I know that there's so many ways to present design thinking because it's a really big topic. But for me, I try to give you exactly how to practice it, how to apply it in certain cases for you to get the most value of it, how to apply it as a student, how to apply it as a participant in a competition, in a hackathon maybe, or also how to apply it as an employee or an entrepreneur, like the different circles where you can apply design thinking. So yeah, I would love to know more about you guys in general, and or if you want to introduce yourself individually, hey, I wouldn't mind it, but I would love to also save a little bit of time and give me the general context of this workshop, so I can help you out exactly in the aspect that you need for with this workshop, and we can reach our goal. Mhm. And also, where you guys from, or you're like the members, are you from the same university, from Tunisia, all of you guys, or Mhm.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
use the chat, guys. قولوا لنا زمانين
Yeah,
maybe نقدر نشارك.
internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me well? First of all, I haven't asked.
Yes,
So
yes,
yeah, okay.
yes. Can
Okay.
hear you.
Guys, okay. So, what your class, or your, let's say, your major, and yeah, it's, I think you're from the same school. So let's just know the major, right? So what's your major exactly? شنو هو الكونتكست بتاع الكومبيتيشن ولا بتاع الورك هذايا؟ what do you need it for? That will help me a lot باش نربحكم برشا وقت. I don't give you the extra stuff that you probably don't need though.
Okay, so Mr. Anas, I'm so happy first of all خاطركم معنا اليوم.
Did I mute myself? توا ولا من بكري؟ ليلة. I've been talking for a while, right? Oh my god. Okay, so I was saying, we hear you. Tawa. But so for Muhammad, I said I'll probably need you later, in like one hour, because there is an example about data science. Sabil, nice to meet you, Noor. Nice to meet you, Sabil. Muhammad, of course. Guys, the whoever wanna say hi, feel free to say something in chat. If not, then we can proceed, and maybe Iman, you can tell me more about the workshop itself and why do you think you need design thinking. Yeah, and I'm reading chat, so if you want to say hi, I'm checking up chat.
Okay, so there is this one big competition. It's named Solution Challenge. Google hosts it for Google Developer Student Clubs, and we are Google Developer Student Club in it. So one of the first phases in this competition, after of course teaming up and registering for the competition, is to brainstorm using the design thinking methodology. And then we're going to be having a series of workshops about design sprint. Well, and then we just need one prototype. Then we prepare a video to submit it for the Solution Challenge competition. That's the big idea, I guess.
Sweet. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're gonna be working on the SDGs. So
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
the
I
theme
think I
is
yeah. Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, continue.
the theme is to solve for one or more of the sustainable development goals using Google technology.
Okay,
That's the
perfect.
challenge.
Yeah. I think I heard about it, and also I think I did the same workshop for a different club for the same competition. So I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Listen. Yeah, I'm gonna share the same information, probably even more, because I know more about the competition now, and hopefully it will be of help. And also, I think we have enough time to finish it, so no worries. Because I'm gonna remove all the fluff. I'm gonna give you exactly what you should do, what the most value you can get out of design thinking in your context, and yeah, it should be fun. Yeah, so nice to meet you guys. Donias, I don't want to butcher your name. Donias, hopefully. Donias. Stufa, Shadha, Noor. Yes, Donias. What does it mean, by the way? It's the first time I hear that name. Shadha, Noor, Malek, Noor again. Aya. Okay, so nice to meet you guys. Really a pleasure. Inshallah ta'ala, this super light because it's going to be mostly example, mostly information. This is how I do it. Design thinking, there is so many ways to do it, but for me, as a student that been also active before in competition and stuff, I know exactly what it takes. What it took me before was I was a student or when I was like rising up to apply to use certain techniques in certain margins of time. I know that when I was a student, I was so passionate about how competition and everything. I know that you can't do everything, but you want to display everything. So this is exactly what I'm going to do today. I'm going to give you what you can display without wasting a lot of time. So starting out, nice to meet you too. Thank you. So starting out, let's define a couple of things. So first of all, design thinking in itself. So there is a lot of misconception about design thinking, especially associated with the word design. So it's not necessarily design as in the graphical part of it or the visual part of it. It's mostly design as in designing solutions or having concepts of solutions. So that's the term, that's the design part about design thinking. So yes, it can involve actual graphic design or visual design, but most people associate it a lot with designers. It's not really the case. It's actually becoming a soft skill, so everyone should have an idea about it and should practice it. It's useful for all profiles. It's useful for in the context of competitions. And again, so for a competition, you will have though so many people will have the same ideas, right? It's typical, especially as we move forward in life, we'll have more of the same ideas, but more of the same solutions for one problem. So it's how you solve a problem. It's not whether or not you can solve it. The solutions are already there, but how can you solve it differently? Or how can you solve it better? So that's why design thinking really excels. It's a perspective on how to solve problems. It's not the only one. There is plenty of other ways to solve solutions, but now in markets or in areas where there is plenty of solutions, design thinking excels because it gives you the ability to come up with even better solutions. So design thinking has always been about innovation. It's about creating innovative, creative products, right? And defining a product, first of all, yeah. So a product, this is a word that we're gonna use all the time. So a product is anything that has value for certain amount of people or a certain number of people. So it's not necessarily physical, it's not necessarily digital, it's not necessarily anything specific that you can apply the word product on. It's anything of value. So even a graph can be a product, a business plan can be a product, a digital marketing strategy can be a product. So it's really depending on who finds value in it. So when you say product, it can apply on anything, any solution that you can make, you are going to make, hopefully it's going to be a product, right? So product is generic. It's not, let's not limit yourself to what's like sellable or what's physical, what applies to the term product, because always about what we sell and buy, but it's actually anything of value. It can be a product. It doesn't necessarily have to be about trade or and sell and buy and everything. It can, anything can be a product. So anything you come up with also is a product, because eventually it can be also a value of for the people who may need it for for the problem that they're going through, right? Okay, so I'm gonna skip some. Okay, so for the historical part, again, I hate this part because it's available and it's like there is so many drama about it. There's so many tranches about how design thinking started. Everyone has his own version of it, but I can tell you really simply what you need to know. If not, you can also check it out. The information is, we can talk about it for days, but the summary is that uh, design thinking came up as a way for big companies and big corporations to adapt to the change of behavior that the customers in the market had. So in the, let's say 1950s, 50s, around that area, before it, first of all, there was a need for products regardless. So any person who creates a product, there is already a market for him, because there is a serious lack of products in all areas after a world devastated by wars and everything. So there was always a need for products. But after the 50s, getting into the 60s, people started to change that behavior because there were options in the market. By that, I mean, there were different possible variations of one product that you can get in your market. So if you wanted chocolate, you have like three different options. You wanted whatever products, you have options, which was something new in the markets, right? So now that there is options, that means that you can invest a lot of money in a product and you don't necessarily win the market. So this is how a lot of people started to wonder, okay, how can I prevent myself from wasting money on products, launching them in the market, but not necessarily having my value back? So this is how, like, primarily, it's not like directly talking about design thinking, but this is the most common route that people consider the start of design thinking, that it started after the change of behavior, because people started, or the company owners started to consult people about what they need instead of giving them and expecting them to take it. So what do you need exactly? What can I provide for you? This is the general approach. So all in all, again, it's a perspective of how to solve problems. It works perfectly right now because it fits so much how the market's it's working. It could change in the future. You never know. But the main reason why we keep saying the word perspective, because um, in the human nature, the way we solve problems usually, for example, a circle, we are all engineers here. Let's assume we are all engineers. So if I have a problem, it's more likely that I'm going to just ask my circle, like people around me that I know, that is 90% people who are with a similar mindset to me, or at least a similar background, right? So I'm going to ask engineers, I'm going to ask students, I'm going to ask probably teachers. So it's pretty much the same circle. So it's a really limited amount of life experience that I'm trying to get solutions from. So I'm consulting people that they may not necessarily have different opinions, different ideas, or different experiences in life than me. So for me to go to them to solve my problems won't necessarily come up with something really innovative or really new. So the chances are high we're going to have the same mindset. Design thinking is inspired by going to different circles really far from you, and sometimes even circles that you can't even project yourself into, like users, those types of users that you don't have the same life experience with because you never lived that problem. So design thinking pushes you to go to that circle of people and get the information from them, the people who are actually suffering from the problem, not you or your circle that you're trying to come up with something innovative. It's actually the user who will give you the leads of how to solve the problem. This is the notion of user-centered design, or human-centered design, depends on the context of usage. So human-centered design is designing products, creating solutions based on what the user needs. It's not based on what you need or what you find right in the certain context of whatever problem you are trying to solve, right? So this is like a small intro to the whole thing. So I have like a little cute presentation, nothing to chart, just to go through it together, and we'll explain the different steps, different techniques of design thinking, and how you guys can apply it in your competition. And I'm sure it's gonna give you an edge. Of course, it's gonna give you an edge if I don't end up doing the same workshop with every club in Tunisia, then everyone has the same edge. But so far, I didn't do it much, so it should be giving you guys an edge over at least most of the other teams that I haven't worked with. So yeah. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So design thinking, really, really simply, really, really briefly, it's a 5-step process. It's a 5-step process based on mostly interacting with user. So it starts with the user. The user is always like your client, the circle of people that you may target or you want to target with your product, and it ends up also with the user and it iterates with the user. So he's always present. He's always the most impactful member of the creative process, let's say, because it's not personal. It's about his needs, because he's the only one relevant for their success of a product, the person who may use it and the person who is suffering from the problem. So that's to say that if you really want to embrace the user needs, that's the only way you can actually come up with something innovative to solve his problem, because he will give you exactly what you need and the problems that weren't solved yet. The user will tell you what he's still suffering from. So that way you know what you can deliver that nobody else has already delivered to him. So it's really simple. It's really, really linear. So yeah, so let's go through it. Yeah, again, so as we said earlier, design thinking is a point of view on how to creatively solve problems. It's a point of view. There are so many points of view, other perspectives, but currently it's the most efficient, because this market thrives, or current markets, current customers, current users thrive on creativity, innovation. So it's not whether or not you can solve a problem today, it's whether or not you can solve it in an innovative way. So there is plenty of solutions of everything. So delivery, shopping, I don't know, carpooling, any kind of problem, there is plenty of solutions, but it's always who adds that extra innovative layer, that it's extra edge that comes on top. And this also applies on your competition. So don't try to think outside of the box a little bit too much. You will end up doing something that probably exists or someone else already thought of it. But what makes you different, or what makes you win the competition, is what you added as small value. Don't The chances of you finding a problem that has never been solved is really, really low in it, because everyone is working or thinking the same way. But the chances of you working on a problem that is obvious and everyone is suffering from, and also there is all other like alternatives on the market, it's a lot easier to do, because you can study them, improve them, and actually solve the problem better than they did. So don't overdo it trying to find something unique or something that nobody has done before, because sometimes it can be a burner and you can waste a lot of time, and it's rare. You can definitely find it. I'm not blocking anyone's initiative, but sometimes it's hard, and there's a lot of products that could be optimized, and you can still find the same value in than finding something that nobody worked on. Yeah, so we said it's a perspective on solving creative problems creatively. So when we talk about creativity, we talk about innovation. We talk about something new, something that have like an undiscovered territory or of value that the user finds within your product, right? So we're gonna define what's innovative, so we can filter out exactly the kind of ideas that we have in the future. Also in the brainstorming, how can I know if my idea is worth working on once we got to the brainstorming, of course, and also how to filter out ideas even on the market. Like how can you place yourself on the market based on innovation? So this chart is one of the most important slides. Feel free to even take a screenshot really quickly, because this one will go along a long way with us through the presentation, also with you in the brainstorming. So innovation is the intersection of three sections. Innovation is the sweet spot between desirability, viability, and feasibility. When you have these three axes, these three pillars available in a product or in an idea, that's when you know you have a really solid project that you can work on, or a really solid product. So let's define them. So desirability, user focused, what makes sense to people and for people. So by that, it's pretty straightforward. It's always about the user. It's always about the people who are suffering from the problem, or the people who will buy the product or use it. So, and use it, because it's the one factor that can affect the success of your product. It's not your subjective take on it. It's not whether you like it or not. It's not how you see it. It's whether or not people will use it. So it's totally common sense to make it around what the user needs. So you need to make sure that users will want a solution, or will want that product, or will want that idea to be reality. So that should be always the starting point. Do people want this idea? Do people want this product? And are people willing to spend money on it also? So this is desirability. Second point, this is really important for you guys, because when you talk about Google technologies, I'm pretty sure they're giving you a lot of margin of technology. So there's a lot of things you can use, but there's so many things that are not necessarily applicable to certain cases. So by that, we get to viability. Viability as an resource process focused. What is functionally possible within the foreseeable future? So this means, do you have the money to realize the idea? Do you have the expertise? And do you have the technology? And do you have also, let's say, the infrastructure uh, within the foreseeable future? By that, I mean, even if you don't have it now, but you can expect it within a reasonable amount of time. For example, we don't have the money today, but we have funding coming in 1 year, so we can realize the product. That's a reasonable amount of time. But foreseeable future as in a time frame that you can resonate with, or you can actually consider as realistic. Um, I can give you an example. So for here in Tunisia, for example, there's a lot of what's the term? Electric car charging stations that has been getting set up in different locations, right? Even though we don't have the product, or we don't have the users yet for them, but we are expecting within the foreseeable future for electric cars to be available more in Tunisia. So therefore, it's something to, like, it's viable within the foreseeable future to have those. So that's what an example of what's foreseeable. So it's foreseeable to have that electric cars in Tunisia in the near future. It's foreseeable for the world to go VR, and to have like like alternative reality to everything almost. So that's something foreseeable. In fact, that's what Meta did with the whole, or Facebook did with the whole rebranding to Meta. So what they did is they were the leaders to sort of open up the doors and at least start commercializing the whole metaverse thing, even though the infrastructure isn't there in most countries, and even as users or people aren't really trained and informed about such thing. But they know that in the foreseeable future that can be reality, that can be something more common, that can be something more accessible to everyone. It's really important to have viable solutions when you guys do the brainstorming and you think together, okay, what we can do, what we can we actually realize this. You should consider, like, financially, what can you have with what you have now, and what you have in the foreseeable future. From expertise, as in human resources, what you have now and what you can have really soon or in the foreseeable future. Infrastructure in the area or country or sector where you are going to propose your solution, is there the infrastructure that can accept it or work with it or adapt to it in like currently or in the foreseeable future? And lastly, also the technology. Is there the technology that can help us create the solution? Because I can clearly say right now, okay, I want to create a solution, that a product that will help, I don't know, teleport things wherever. So on paper that's really nice, but do we have the technology to create it? It's not viable because I don't have the technology to create a solution that is desirable to everyone, right? So it's always also about viability with desirability. It starts with desirability. Once you get that, you get to viability. Then you move on to feasibility. So in feasibility, it's always about the outcomes, right? So outcomes focused, what is likely to become part of a sustainable model. So by this I mean the idea should work today and should also be functional tomorrow. By functional as in makes money. Now, let's take an example. So there is a lot of things that appeared during the COVID area that we are still in. Well, like websites, products, shops, etc. All of them are, their model is around COVID being around, about either medicines, preventative measures, whatever. It's their model is around COVID. So once COVID is gone, a lot of these businesses and products will crash because their models aren't sustainable outside of COVID being there. So they couldn't sustain their income with on the long term. So if they don't really adjust, or if they didn't have a sustainable model, as in a way for them to adapt to the changing market, then they will all vanish. So this is what feasibility means, as in it does work now, as in it can make money today, but it can also maintain it tomorrow and the day after and the month after and the year after. So it's something long term. It's not just a temporary patch or on a long term solution, a long term problem. Sorry. Yeah. So these are the three axes. Keep them in mind, really, because they will help us out later on in the brainstorming and in how to filter out ideas. And once you have like so many ideas, this is your go-to let's say graph, or you go to scheme where you try to filter out the ideas based on this. Okay, I have so many ideas. Let's see whether or not they're desirable, viable, and also feasible. If they aren't, or they lack in certain areas, then you can skip them. So far so good. Any questions? Everything clear? Okay, it's perfect. Perfect. Hey. Um, okay, so got 22. Let's give me at least like 15 thumbs up or something. At least مش عارف اللي عبدكم سوا. ولا اللي عنده question he can ask it. Okay, so got 2. So far so good. بقيك حق. Okay, sweet. By the way, this is the first time for me to be on this platform, like the Google Dev platform. It seems really nice. So, has like a layout and everything. Is it like open for public, or is it like club specific?
It is specific actually,
Okay, it's really nice.
but its capacity is very nice. So it's up to
Yeah.
1,000, but we can limit it to 350 if we like if the first 50% can open their accounts and max.
No, I see.
Yes, yes.
And quality-wise, do you see me in HD, or is it like meets?
No, actually, it's not bad. It's like I think it's good.
Nice 4K. Okay, I see. لحظة صفوان. Ça va? Okay, sweet. Anyway, while I'm going through the steps, اللي عنده question, peu importe la question, he can type it and I will go back to it. وعلى فكرة, I haven't even like asked whether or not I should do this in English ولا français ولا عربي, but I'm most comfortable in English. We can break it down. كان فما شكون he's not really comfortable, and he doesn't even have to contact me. نجم contact Iman and tell her that can we switch this up, and no problem. Okay, so okay, all good. Donius, 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 please. I need to know what your name mean. Like seriously, I need to know. But let's start on the steps. I don't know if it's gonna be really smooth. It's full of examples. It's full of practical stuff. I really removed all the fluff. Again, from a infinity of information for each and every step. You can find it everywhere, but I'm trying to give you exactly how it's being applied. First of all, in big companies and in actual functional level. From a barsha theory, from a barsha fluff around it. But this is exactly how big companies are applying it. This is something we do on the weekly, and I'm currently working with really elite designers, developers, product owners, managers, etc. Like we have ex Google, ex Amazon. So I think this is the peak of how design thinking is being applied. Like it's أما اللي حاب يدخل أكثر في الديتاي, they're available everywhere. Like if you want to go in on each step and every technique, I absolutely advise you to go do the search. But I wanted to summarize it more for you guys to save the time, to keep it more smooth, and also to have fun and be engaged with it, because it can be really boring if you gonna go through each and every detail. And hopefully it's not boring now. Yeah. So the first step we're gonna start with is empathy. So empathize is the most important step in the whole process, right? So empathize is trying to get the information, the emotional, all the information actually emotionally, like knowledge-wise, experience-wise, spiritual-wise. It's a state of mind in which you put yourself in the user's position, or you live a certain experience as if you are in a different persona, or from the perspective of a different person. So this is what empathy is. So it's the most critical part of the whole process, because here you can define whether or not you can detect whether or not there is something worth working on, or there is a valid product, a problem or product. So in your case, حاجة مزيانة برشا اللي Google gave you certain themes, so you already know like you know exactly what to tackle. So you're not like trying to figure out, okay, what can I do, or what should I do, or which area. So you have certain areas that you can pick and work with. So that's really, really good. But still, empathy will help you find out exactly what you want to work on, right? So empathy, again, it's a state of mind based on information that you get, of course, and experiences, and also emotional, let's say, exchange, in which you can live an experience or project a certain experience that another person is living on yourself, or project yourself on that experience and live it from his perspective. So this is the core of the design thinking process, because again, it's about human-centered design or user-centered design, as in it's everything about the user. So it's really important for you to see from his eyes, from his perspective, and from his point of view. So empathize with the users. Here's the strategies. How can I get the information that I need to see the problem or the environment? Sometimes it can be an entire environment that I'm trying to study. So here's the techniques that you can use, the strategies to get the most information from the user. Okay, so I picked 5. These 5 are the most used in professional circles. There are others, there are plenty of others, but these are the top 5. So we got surveys, the questionnaire. So surveys are the easiest to set up and the most efficient to do online or physical, because the communities right now, today, if we can, so we have a problem about, let's say, hunger, right? So we're trying to solve something related to hunger, world hunger, equity, a social justice pillar. So you already can directly find the communities that are involved in this, or the people that are suffering from this, or have issues with it. You can already find them pre clustered on social media. So, for example, if I'm doing a solution for gaming, I can go to the gaming community and ask them exactly what their problems are, because there are certain groups on Facebook or other platforms that they can go to. If I want to solve a problem about wildlife, for example, I can go to camping groups, I can go to nature preservers, I can go to like a lot of nature fanatics groups that I can go to and ask them and get the information from them. So surveys are really easy to set up, and we can give you high quality feedback because you are addressing a community that is engaged in the problem or engaged in the environment or the theme that you were working on. So I advise you to do surveys. It's like 10 minutes to set up a survey, and you can just spam social media with it, and you'll get a lot of high quality feedback. Okay, you will get some trolls every now and then. That's typical in every test, in every field. But it's high quality feedback most of the time. And again, the feedback you were looking for is different information about the problem. It's really, you don't have to think a lot about your questions because you're trying to get more context. Anything that you don't know, anything that you find interesting, just ask it in the survey. It's not like you have to ask special questions. Of course, there is techniques. There is also ways to ask. That's a whole different chapter. But for you, especially on this level of a competition, you can just ask the areas that you want to know, whether or not people will buy a product, whether or not people will are suffering from this and that, how is their experience with that product or with that competitor on the market. How so it's don't even overthink it. Just ask questions that will seem good or useful for you to know about. Focus groups. So focus groups is basically an interview, but with a lot of people. So you get usually 20, 30 participants. Well, it varies on the product, but you can get a lot of participants. It usually stays between 2 to 3 hours, and it's usually paid also. Usually you actually pay the people you bring to the focus group, and the goal of it is to observe people using people, of course, who are of interest for you, as in potential clients, potential users for your product, to observe them as they use your product or they use other competitor products or other products that you may find interesting. So this way you can have live observation on how they suffer from a certain problem. For example, I can give you a small image on this. So usually when there is a new way of doing packaging, so a certain company is trying to do an innovative way of packaging, I don't know, cookies or anything, they usually make a lot of focus groups where they give the product to the users and see how they interact with the packaging. They try to count the time they needed to open it, how their reaction, did they like it or not. They compare it to other products. So that's the goal of focus groups. Usually it's for direct interaction. And focus group usually is the people or the administrators are usually two teams. So there is the team that animates the workshop or the focus group, so the interviewer, and there is a team usually that is hidden, like behind some like smoke glass or anything, that is just taking observation, like body language, reaction, face expression, facial expressions, yeah, all of that. So they just take a note observations because those are also interesting. Because if you see me holding a certain element, certain product, I'm frowning, that's a sign of it. I'm finding certain blockers. I'm happy. I'm surprised. I'm interacting with it really smoothly, even though I don't know it. So there's a lot of things you can see in direct interaction that can give you some positive and some negative hints. So that's the focus groups. Now the interviews. So interviews pretty straightforward. You invite someone, or you can go to someone, interview him even online or physically. The goal is to again get some high quality feedback, similar to the surveys. So the key for a successful interview is to ask the right questions and also to know how to ask without pushing the user into a certain direction, or that's called like emotionally charged questions. So if you ask a person, how are you doing? versus if you ask him, "Are you doing good?" It's a totally different way to ask a question. So, "How are you doing?" is a neutral question. So you can answer me with a yes or no in a way. So it's neutral. "Are you doing good?" It's emotionally charged question. You are asking a person a question and giving him already a hint on a certain emotion, right? And a lot of people follow that. Even we have that even in our in like the way we communicate. For example, كي تسأل شكون لاباس ولا شعامل. شعامل it's a neutral question. شعامل نجم يحكي لك بوزيتيف، نجم يحكي لك نيجاتيف. لاباس mostly is positive. So الانسان اللي باش يجاوبك في الحاجه ايه لاباس سوا اللي وي اتوا ويكمل conversation هم. خاطر for him it's a emotionally charged question in a way that you're expecting him to answer in a positive way. So that's the difference. Even in interviews, if you want to get high quality feedback, you need to ask non-charged questions or non-emotionally charged questions. I can give you another example. If you ask someone, "Do you consider the amount of 100 dinars a lot of money?" That's to an extent an emotionally charged question, because if he answers as there is certain judgment in that question. There is a certain, you're setting him to a certain financial status, because if he answers, for example, "It's a lot of money," then you sort of, he may overthink it as if he's given the impression that he's poor or he can't afford that sum of money. So a lot of people will say, "No, it's not a big sum of money," even though it's an interesting sum of money for most people. However, if you ask someone, "What do you consider as a fair price for this product?" So this is a neutral question. He will probably answer you like 50 dinars or 30 dinars, a lot less than what he said. No, what he claimed, that's not a lot of amount of money. So when you ask him directly, he said 100 dinars isn't a lot of money. But when you ask him in a neutral way, what does he consider as a fair price or even a high price, he will probably say 50. So I don't know if you got the example here. You can ask the same question differently, and if you lead the user, he will go. He's more likely to follow your emotion, like your initial emotional lead, than to give his honest opinion. Again, for example, and a last example. I'm giving a lot of examples of this because this is really important, even in real life. By the way, this is actually good to know when you communicate with people. So, for example, if you ask someone, um, "Are you suffering using public transport?" That's an emotionally charged question. Right? Suffering, like he's already gonna suffer just answering that question. But if you question him, "What's your experience like with public transport?" So that's a neutral question. He can answer, "It's bad, it's good, it's horrific, I'm suffering." So that's a different way to ask the same question, but you should always keep it neutral. No emotional charge. Even when you communicate with people, by the way, it can be helpful in certain cases. Yeah, so that's interviews. Observations. So for observations are mostly going to where the problem is, or where your users are, depending on the topic, and having direct observations, like taking notes. For example, if you're trying to solve a problem of pollution, you can go to a polluted place and take observations. What's going on? If you are trying to solve a problem of public transportation, you can go to areas where there is a public transportation issues and take notes. Okay, there is always a problem with public transportation where there is rush hour, but there is no problem during the day. Most people take cabs when there is problems with public transportations, etc., etc. Like, you can take observations just to sort of have a pattern, have notes, and find the areas where you can work on. So that's observation. And lastly, data analysis. So in Bekri, حكيت مع محمد Khalil about how I need him. So Khalil, I don't know if you're still with us. Do you have an idea on data sets? I don't know if he's still here. Khalil, Muhammad Khalil. Let me check chat. Oh, not really. Okay. Sorry, dude. You let me down. Come on. كنت معامل عليك. This was your moment, man. Yeah, it's okay. I'm messing with you. Yeah. So since Khalil let me down, no, seriously. So data sets basically, really, really in a basic way. Uh, Probably in 2 months, Khalil will correct me on this. But for now, just in a really basic way. So there is databases of information available online that people can buy, right? They are called data sets. These data sets can store anything actually. One of the things they store is human behavior. So there is a lot of data sets provided by a lot of apps and a lot of social platforms that can capture human behavior for, and you can know this when, even when you install, like, this is a big topic, but I will try to sum it up. So for example, when you install an app on your phone that doesn't necessarily need data but still request the permission to send data, to send reports, to send whatever. So this is actually the app sending your behavior on the app to certain data sets, and it's getting stored, and eventually it's being sold. So what you can get from these data sets is, for example, Facebook main revenue, or used to have the main revenue by selling data sets to advertisers. So Facebook like watches or tracks what you see most, what you Google, what you search for, what you like, what you dislike, what you skip, what you spend a lot of time on, and sort of tracks your behavior along with other apps. For example, Google Maps that tracks where you are exactly, other apps that track what you order, other apps that track what you. So overall, if you look at the different apps that you use throughout the day, you will have a pattern over a year of what you do every day, most of the time. So that's the content of the data set. So each app will sort of store what you do in it, and you will have a human behavior pretty much stored. So when you, as a data analyst, sorry, you can actually analyze that data set and get a certain pattern for a specific topic that concerns you. For example, I want to track how people use public transportation, so or use I don't know, delivery. So I can track. Okay, so Fulan is getting delivery every Sunday, and they get pizza, for example. So that's a specific behavior that they can track and they can work around to optimize my own solution, even though it's a really basic example. In fact, a good example also for this, at least for the data sets, I'm pretty sure at least one of you guys went through this. Ever had the thing when you are talking with a friend on social media, or you did a search on Google, or on a certain application, for example, on Jumia, or anything actually, and for example, you are talking with a friend and you send the word gym. Okay, so you send gym, and as soon as you refresh your Facebook, you get ads about gym supplements, and about like gym apparel and gym like memberships and stuff. I don't know if anyone had this, or it can happen for anything, but Facebook instantly gives you recommendations about things that you was just talking about. You had this, right? I assume at least someone went through this. Anyone? Okay. Has so when that happens, what happens in reality is, for example, if I search for chocolate, Facebook will store my information, or my search, because again, Facebook of course has to protect my privacy, but they don't have to protect what I'm typing specifically. They can take what I'm typing and send it in an anonymous, or not anonymous, but in a word to word. So not specifically a sentence, but it can be clustered to certain words. So they can store my search history, and they can sell it or provide it to a certain advertiser that they probably got paid from, a chocolate advertiser, let's say. And since it's the most, let's say, interesting time for me to buy chocolate is the time where I was searching for chocolate. So that's why I get directly ads about chocolate, because it's the most probable time in which I could buy chocolate, when I was just looking for it. This is what happens in that case, in almost anything you type or search for. Once you search for it, you get ads about it, because you're more than likely to buy it. So that's how the whole process works. This is like on the side. Doesn't You don't have to dive a lot into it, but eventually you will. Yeah, for those also, yeah, Muhammad Khalil may get to discover it more than all of us, but yeah, it's still interesting to know a bit how things work. Okay, so these are a few of the techniques. So now let's say we got to do them. We got the information that we needed from the user. We talked about like the problem, how the user is suffering from the problem, what can we get, what can he expect for that to be solved, like what other products is he using, all type of questions just to get an idea on what can we work on, right? So right now, how can we utilize the information or at least come up with more value of it? So once we finish collecting information, we try to synthesize needs and insights. So by that we can sort of try to summarize everything. So if we have like 20 persons saying that they have problems of public transportation, let's say during rush hour, then that we can synthesize that to just say, okay, there is a problem during rush hours. So transportation problem during rush hour. That's the summary. That's the insight. We don't have to state each and every person who said it. Think about goals, verbs, in the form of verbs. Um, by that, for example, okay, so we said there is a problem in transport or transport problem during rush hour. So the goal now is to transport people during rush hour. That's our goal, to transport people during rush hour, or this is at least the goal of the user. Transport during rush hour. Now, once you have that, like you have the main goal of your search, make intuitive leaps. So intuitive leaps is a way for you to expand your idea and find areas of innovation. How do you do it? So it's about trying to add certain features to the main goal. So we said transport people during rush hour. We can try to add the intuitive leap of cheaper. So let's try, should we like transport people during rush hour cheaper, for example, faster, um, like with less pollution, like in a more friendly, environment friendly way. I don't know, like safer. So there is these intuitive leaps that you add to the main goal and try to discover, okay, can I work on this? Does this still make it innovative? Is there solutions who did this? Is this something worth working on? So this is something I give a lot of credit for a certain startup or company right now in Tunis, which is Intigo, if you ever heard about it. So Intigo, that the taxi scooter service in Tunis, if you are familiar with it. So they did something really interesting. So they've seen the market, they've seen the people you suffering from, again, transport problems. And what they did is they studied, of course, they did the first steps that we talked about. And so they came up probably with the same goal, okay, to transport people during hours where transport isn't available. But for them, they added probably two or three intuitive leaps. So they saw that solving the problem with cars won't help it because cars are part of the rush hour. So cars will still be affected and will make it even worse. Solving, and also it will be as expensive as all other services that people didn't find really useful. For example, Bolt, that people find really expensive and use it really in emergencies. So Intigo didn't want to go that route. So they added the intuitive leap of cheaper. So Intigo went with cheaper transport. Also, they knew that people who want to use their servers need efficient transport, as in they don't want to be part of the rush hour, they want to avoid it. So they added faster, right? So cheaper, faster, and in a way, less cheaper and more even affordable on a business perspective. So once they came up with that and realized, okay, there is nobody who's offering that such a solution or has that same goal, which is providing transport that is affordable and that is fast. That's how they came up with the idea of using scooters. So okay, now what can we use to achieve this goal that is available for us? So they've seen around the world, they've seen probably what's affordable also for them, and they realize, okay, scooters can be the mean of transport that can ensure transport for sure, that can be cheaper because again they consume less, and of course it's common sense for them to be cheaper for the user, and also faster because scooters are less likely to be affected by rush hour, right? So this is a good way or a good application of intuitive leaps in which you take a main goal and try to add a little more value and see whether or not you can find something more to work on or something more innovative in that specific with that specific leap, right? So yeah. Okay, so this is a workshop that I usually do when I actually do the workshop live, as in with face to face. So why not? Maybe another time we can do this when I'm actually there. So yeah, that's pretty much on empathy. And this is probably the most time we're gonna spend on a step because everything else is gonna be really really smoother. Any questions so far? So good, guys. Hopefully, yeah. Shad, all good. At 18 attendees, weren't we 22? Oh, already. Oh, I'm sort of hurt. All good. À part nous, ça va البقية? You should do more presentations. Oh, no, you decided to make my day. Okay, perfect. Okay, sweet. If كان فما أي question, feel free again to stop me حتى كان في وسط السلايد, so you don't have to wait. Well, I don't know if you can unmute yourself for Gomadia, but since I couldn't, so I expect nobody can. So, but كان فما أي حاجة, just stop me at any given time. It's gonna get even more cool. Hopefully, it's not boring. But all around it's gonna get faster, and it should be we get to the more practical parts. Yeah, it's gonna be full of examples. Yeah. Okay, so we're done with empathy. We empathize with our user. خدينا information الكل. We got all the info. Now what you're gonna do with it? So we're gonna define the problem that you're gonna work on. In empathy, we can scout or we can discover a really big field or really big theme, or really كيما عندكم déjà, like we have really big themes, so you're gonna discover them, but you're gonna see what you're gonna work on exactly based on your resources, based on what you have as time, as resources again, as team composition, etc. So it only makes sense to define exactly the margin that you're going to work on or the problem that you're going to work on from the big theme that you discover in empathy. So define or definition, let's define the problem. So by defining the problem, as in the problem you're going to work on, because in empathy you're sort of discovering the problem also, but on a bigger scale, and sometimes you're just discovering a theme. Like your case, you have certain themes that you can work on, so it's a big margin. In the definition, you're going to take a little section or specific part of it. In some cases, when you have the resources, you can take the whole thing. Like if you have the resources to solve an entire social problem or social justice pillar, then go ahead. But in most cases, you have resources that limit you, so you have to know exactly which part of the problem you should start with. Okay, so as you define the problem, be flexible. Be flexible. By that I mean, you should consider where you start. Where you start with it. Where you start has a lot to do with where you end up. I think this is a quote. Actually, you should put the quote things on it. So um, where you start has a lot with where you end up. By that I mean, if you pick the wrong problem, there is a big risk for you um, to create a solution that nobody asked for or nobody needs. So if you start with something that nobody is suffering from, nobody asked for, you will create a product or solution of no value to nobody. So take your time to understand the problem, understand what you can do, what you should do, and then move on with the process. So it's really important to define exactly what part of the problem you can work on, you should work on, and what's also doable for you to work on. Frame the problem based on your empathetic knowledge. This is again really important. This is based on the empathetic knowledge. By this I mean try to always see the problem from the user's perspective. As in, for example, if you're trying to define the problem that you work on uh, for public transportation, for example, like we said, to transport people during the rush hours, faster and cheaper. You can frame the problem from your empathetic knowledge, and for example, um, uh, faster transport that doesn't include cars, for example. So you're not going to work on cars, because that didn't already work when you did the empathetic knowledge. Transport that doesn't include um, metro, or yeah. So because that's also didn't solve the people's problems already. So you should frame it based on your empathetic knowledge and eliminate the areas that already knew that didn't work. So it's not like you're stating the same problem again that you discovered in the empathy phase. No, but you're stating the problem that you will work on from your perspective, not based on what other people worked on and what didn't work already for other people. So empathetic knowledge should always be there for you. And when you say empathetic knowledge, it's exactly what you got to discover as you communicate with the users and the information that you got from them. Like what did work for them, what didn't work, what they need, what they want, what they are willing to pay for. So that's your problem. That's the problem you're trying to work on, as in the product you're trying to deliver. And yeah, so these are the criteria of the problem you want to have or you want to work on. It should be a user focused. Who is our desired user, and what is the underlying benefit or behavior we're trying to achieve? So once we have the problem in front of us, so we can talk about who's our desired user. So in the case of transport, our desired user is the person suffering from issues or suffering from public transport during rush hours, who's looking for cheaper and faster solutions. That's our target desired user. Behavior we're trying to achieve. So every app, every app has a behavior that it tries to achieve, because every successful app actually changes the way in your human behavior. Successful apps become part of our daily routine, or how we actually function through the day, because they solve the problem so good that we need them as part of how we tackle that problem on a daily basis. For example, delivery solutions, for example, e-commerce platform. For example, let's go even further for social media. So Instagram has created the behavior of the need for you to take really good pics and share them. That wasn't a need before. Like everyone had the same picture, me included. Like I had the same picture used everywhere, and I was happy that I never felt the urge that I should take a good pic and share it with people, because there was never that behavior was never needed. I never needed to achieve that. I never needed to have good pics. But now that you are on Instagram, you sort of have to take good pics and share them, because that's the behavior you're trying to achieve by using the application, sharing imagery. Same for, I don't know, for Snapchat, for example. So the behavior Snapchat established is sharing little snippets, or little clips. So that's something that, or filters also. So that's something that, no, it wasn't a behavior people wanted to achieve, but the app was so successful that it was something like it stuck with the users, and it became almost like a norm of communication, or part of the daily communication, or a certain aspect of communication. That's how successful it was. Even I think the word snap became a thing from Snapchat, and it can apply to anything actually, like Facebook, LinkedIn. So successful apps become part of your behavior and how you go through your day. So when you talk about your solution, you consider what's the possible behavior that you can create. For example, again, back to the transport, My goal is that my user will use the app every day to go to work and to go from work home to and go back home. So that's the behavior I'm aspiring to get. So it should be applicable to every case, every product. There should be a certain behavior. For example, if I'm making some chocolate, I'm trying to create a new brand of chocolate. My behavior, depending on the product or the quality of the product, I would want. It's not the same that, for example, Raffaello or Ferrero Rocher is trying to offer than Mash Said is trying to offer. It's not the same behavior. So Said is more of a snack kind of product, but Ferrero Rocher is more of like a gift or more like a luxurious product. So same, initially same product, like kind of sweet chocolate, whatever, but it's totally different behavior. So one is about luxury, second is about daily usage, and it's totally different, right? That's applicable on everything almost. There is a certain behavior that you're expecting the user to have with your product. Okay, so now one of the criteria that your problem should have is broad enough to allow you to discover areas of unexpected value. Why do we want to do this? By this, I mean you shouldn't be so limited that you can't grow out of it. For example, if you work on a delivery solution, you want it to at some point to be, for example, a private driver, so you can find more value. You want to discover what else you can. It should be developable or upgradable. It shouldn't be really rigid in a way that you can't really add anything to it. And this is applicable to the things we talked about. For example, every solution that is built around COVID is really, really like narrow, which we'll get to after. As in, there isn't really ways to expand from there, unless you have a really good, let's say, strategy or a way for you to just rebrand. But the problem is really, really narrow in a way that you can't really expand. So you need to have a problem. For example, if you are offering a VR game, it should also be possible for you to maybe create an MMO game in the future. So that's something you can see yourself expanding to. Back to Intego, actually, which is again a really interesting topic. So Intego started with taxi scooters. That was the initial problem, but their area of interest was so broad that they slowly, gradually added uh, private driver, they added delivery, they added logistics, they added shopping. So these are areas of discovered value, that unexpected value that they kept working on, that they kept adding, but they started with the main problem. It's not like you are considering this from the start, but you keep this in mind that, okay, my idea can be something else in the future, and I can add to it something else to make it even better. So that's the mindset. It's about the mindset. It's not necessarily having to consider this from the start, but it's having the mindset. Narrow enough to be manageable and solvable, as in, okay, it's good to open up the windows and to open up the different perspectives, but also to keep it realistic, as in your main idea should be solvable. It's not like you are starting, okay, so I'm gonna solve the problem of transport using helicopters, for example. That's not realistic, because I know they don't have the resources, they don't have the infrastructure, and it can't be really manageable for me. Does it work? Probably yes, but it's not manageable and solvable. Like, it's not. I don't have the resources to realize that. So that's why also it should be somewhere in between. Okay, you can think about areas of unexpected value. You can think what I can do in the future, but your starting point should be doable and manageable. Your starting point should be, you should have the resources to do the starting point. That's the thing. Yep, so that's definition. As you see, it's getting really faster. As we go through steps, it's going to be even less information, hopefully not so boring. But yeah, that's it for definition. So far, so good. Okay, we are down to 13. Guys, come on. It's not that boring, okay? I would be okay with 15, but 13, come on. Okay, seriously though, if I really hope there's at least like 10% value that you find in this. That's for me already. If one person in this group already like gets the most value of this, I would be more than than happy, really, as long as yeah, can use this in your competition. It's all good. So far so good, c'est bon, ça va. Vamos des questions. Anything? Ah, juste باش نعرف moi les connexions ça va تحتهم. باهي. اوكي. باهي. It's all good. It's all good. It's always a pleasure. Okay, so let's move on. Ideation, which is in other words brainstorming. So started with empathy. Empathy, we had the information from the user. We got the what we needed to get from the user. Passed to definition or define. In definition, we define the problem that we can work on based on what the user told us, like on observations or based on the generic general theme that we picked or what we discovered in the empathy. We're gonna pick something small in definition and work on, or big depending on your resources. And in ideation, we're gonna try to come up with 5 potential solutions. Again, 5 is not a magical number. It's just a number I advise people in this context, which is competitions, to go with. Go or try to find or end up with 5 solutions at the very end of brainstorming. It's not like you aim or start with 5, but you end up with 5. So actually, well, you should start with as many as you can, but you should try to end up with 5. And it shouldn't limit yourself with 5. Again, this is just how I see it in certain contexts, because you can have so many potential ideas that you can spend a lot of time on, and eventually you can waste it because you don't really establish any one of them. So 5 is cool for at least this level, but it's not a magical number or anything. So ideate as many solutions as possible. So now that you have the problem set up from definition, you just start to think, okay, how can I solve the solution, solve the problem with the different constraints that I have, with what I have available. So, for example, to transport people faster and cheaper, okay, how can I do that exactly? And I start thinking here, okay, how can I do it? And we can start to have actual products in mind. Yeah, so the brainstorming rules: quantity over quality. So usually it's actually quality over quantity in different cases, but in this one specifically, it's quantity over quality. Let's have as many as we can, because it's always good to have the discussion or to have the ideas coming. And the thing is, when you have the blockers or you don't have the discussion, that's the problem. That okay, when you don't really have ideas, that's the problem. Okay, I don't really know how can I solve this, but when you have the problem, the suggestions and the ideas and proposals coming, that's always nice, because that will always fuel the conversation, and that's healthy. Defer judgment of others and self. So this is also interesting, especially if you're working in teams. So make sure that your opinion is the least important, actually, because there is a certain subjectiveness to one's opinion when they're defending their own idea or explaining it. So make sure you just give an idea and let other people judge it. And again, it's not judging it as in it's right or wrong, just judge it as in how viable, feasible, and desirable it is. So it's always better to let others, because people tend to be less or more objective most of the time, unless there is like some beef going on. But in most cases, people will be more objective. So let others judge, and let your self-judgment the least, at least for your idea, the least important. Encourage wild ideas. So in every team, there is this crazy guy or girl that always comes up with really out of the box ideas. Those are like the best you can have, because those are usually the ones who spark wild ideas or spark innovation within a product or a solution. Because thinking outside or thinking inside the box is what made that problem still unsolvable, because it wasn't solved with the normal thinking of everyone, right? So the chances of it to be solved is someone coming up with something really wild, really crazy. So that's why it's really cool for those kind of people to be encouraged to share more and to be part of the conversation and not eliminated. Like, and that happens a lot. Actually, even though their ideas may seem wild, but they're really worthy and really useful for the conversation in general, and they should be always kept engaged. Draw things out, be visual, as in once you start brainstorming, make sure you write everything down, keep everything on screen or on paper, because sometimes ideas come and go really quickly. So make sure you have everything visual. It's easier to discuss, easier to remember, and always easier to present and share. Build on ideas of others. Okay, so this is really an interesting one, which is a lot of people think there is the concept of theft or ideas theft in brainstorming or in innovation in general, which is really wrong. Actually, it's totally the opposite. Innovation is the fruit of building on ideas. So it's totally okay for you to observe someone else's solution and try to optimize it and build on it and add value to it. That's not theft. That's actually how innovation works, and that's how advancement in general works. Because if we think about it, if you take one small example of something really basic that existed for a while, so let's take listening to music, for example, right? So some person, okay, so I don't know the perfect timelines for this, but I'm speaking in general. So at some point in time, some person somewhere, I wouldn't say listening to music, just recording music. Okay, so recording music. So at some point, some person somewhere at some time point of time thought, okay, I want to stock music or record music somehow. Okay, so that person what did is they discovered the environment, pretty much how empathy worked. So they checked what they have as resources, what there is available for them as tools. So what they ended up with is they used those the vinilis, if you know them, like the big black like discs. Those are the vinilis. So they used those, they stored music in those, and they solved the problem in a crazy innovative way back then, right? So it was really really innovative. It's really something wild. After, let's say, 10, 20 years, some other person at some point of time looked at the same idea, had the same problem, or thought about the same problem. I want to record music, right? So he had the same need, the same problem. What he did is he observed around him. He realized there is an existing solution, which is the vinilis. So what he did is he searched on it. What's wrong with vinilis and how do vinilis are failing users and what he can do to optimize that. So when he did his search, he realized that vinilis, for example, are really fragile, like really, really fragile, and they're not really portable. They're really big and probably expensive back then, like compared to everyday things. So for him, he went for something. He got the things he can work on. So cheaper, more what's the term? Rigid or more robust, let's say, more robust, cheaper, and portable. And so he looked around what's available, the technology, the people, the mindset, the devices, the hardware, and he realized there is the cassettes, right? So he answered the same need, the same problem, but using a newer technology or a newer technique, using the cassettes, which is again the same problem regarding music, but he stepped it up. He fixed what's wrong with the old problem and created new value. So he discovered areas of unexpected value within the same product. Moving forward even more, like 20 more years, some other person had the same problem, which is to record music. Um, and he looked around, he realized there is an existing solution, the cassette. He did the same thing. We researched, realized, okay, the cassette has a problem with, so it's easily that it's fragile in a way also because of the how it works. It's fragile. It has limited storage. So he looked around what's available. There were the CDs, even though I know like CDs and music probably were there, like music was there, CDs were there before music. or at least before the digital format of music, certain formats at least, but still, I think audio, yeah, audio format. So, but just like the way let's break it down to how the thought process went, right? So, let's say this person solved the same problem with CDs. So CDs are more portable, less fragile in a way, and as expensive, or yeah, but also have more storage. So again, that's how he kept pushing the same problem, but we kept getting more value every time and a better product every time. And now we can talk about like the digital format and digital streaming as a eventual way of having it. So you can see here the iteration. Every person takes the same idea in a different timeline and increases it in value and delivers a better product. So to build on ideas of others is actually a blessing. It's a good thing. It's what keeps the wheel spinning. It pushes the whole innovation thing forward because it creates pressure to optimize products and to find more value in the same kind of problem from different products. So this is really interesting for people who are a bit trying to work on a unique topic that nobody worked on. It's really hard to find it. It's okay to build on ideas of others. Stay focused on the topic. This is in brainstorming again. If you get back to the area of brainstorming, so once you start to discuss the topic, don't get too far from it. Keep the same discussion there. Don't open up other topics that aren't really necessarily the problem that you're trying to solve, because you may lose a lot of energy, a lot of flow of ideas that is, yeah, could have been invested in your topic. One conversation at a time, as in let the conversation happen, discuss every idea that you end up with. You can have them like on board or on a paper. Discuss every idea. Also, don't be toxic in this regard. Let people share their take, regardless, because certain people aren't really comfortable talking in public or talking in circles. So don't really shut them down or to block them, because they may never recover from that. Make sure you have a healthy environment for a conversation. And yeah, that's it for ideation. Any question? So far, so good. I guess so. Okay. So so far, so good. Okay, sweet. Okay, so we're done with empathy. We got in empathy. I keep saying the same, so we can sort of have it memorized. In empathy, we get the information from the user, what they need, or we pretty much explore either the theme or the problem. Like we explore it from the user perspective. In definition, we define the problem or the part of the problem we're going to work on. In ideation, we're going to come up with at least five, or preferably five, but it's not a magical number again. It depends on the idea and the resources. But five is okay. So in ideate, we gonna come up with five. Now we're gonna move to prototyping. So in prototyping, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a sample of each of the five ideas. By sample, I mean it's a product that has the most value, but the minimum of investment, with the goal is to show what's innovative about my product. The one important thing about samples or prototype is to display how the function of the product functions, how the product works. It's not about showing it how fun it is, how it's gonna look, how it's gonna feel. Just how it functions, or what's new or what's different, and what's the added value of it. So I'll give you an example. Since we talked a lot about chocolate, so let's say I'm gonna launch a brand of chocolate again, right? So maybe I'll just do it. But let's say I'm gonna launch a brand of chocolate. So I could start just producing five different brands, right? So I have five different recipes in the ideate phase. So I did my process, I empathized and defined, ideated, and I have five different recipes now. Um, All of them could be good recipes. So I could just start producing my brands based on 5 different recipes. So by that I mean spending money on actual production, packaging, delivery, marketing, probably yeah, even return, like all the logistics, let's say. So I could go all in and start producing. But the chances are one recipe will be more successful than the others. So there will be a lot of wasted money on those other recipes compared to one that is actually the people's favorite. Also, not to mention that I'm going to make a bad reputation because some people will have the bad recipe and will judge my brand over it, and I will never recover from that. So um, it's like a too risky of approach to take to launch without actually knowing that my product is already likable. My product is already what the user needs. So that's what prototyping comes in to do, which is basically with the same example. When I want to do a prototype for my brand of chocolate, is I'm gonna do one tablet for each recipe. One tablet, no packaging, no marketing, no branding, no nothing. Just one tablet per recipe, so 5 tablets. And I'm gonna test each tablet with 10 users. Let's say the tablet has 10 yeah, 10 chocolates. So I'm gonna test it with 10 users, and eventually, so each user will have like one piece of chocolate, and eventually the users will point out to one recipe that stands out more than the others. So let's say 8 out of the 10 said that the third recipe is the best one. And if we look at it, so in the first case, I said I mass produced, so I went all out and produced everything. I probably spent a lot of money, like probably like 100 million minimum, like with everything. While in the second case, I spent probably 1% of my budget, probably even less, just to produce 5 examples, test them. And what I did is I got the same value and the same feedback that I would have gotten if I spent all my budget. So, in other words, prototyping saves you from wasting your budget, your resources, but not only that, but also it gives you the same feedback and gives you at least a big part of the feedback that you would get even if you launch your product, but in a safe space. By safe space, I mean you didn't necessarily launch your product. You didn't necessarily went to the market. So you just got the information, adjusted your product, and then you will launch it with more confidence. That's the idea. So to prototype possible solutions, here are the methods that you can take, you can use, or you can't be limited to these, of course. It's always depending on the product. But yeah, these are the main methods that you can do to prototype, to show examples of your work. So storyboards are literally drawings like comics. You can storytell how your product works in certain cases. Again, this is not applicable for everything. There is a certain method for, at least one method for each type of product, but these are the general ones. Simple sketches, for example, for cars. For cars, cars are actually an interesting example for prototypes, because in cars, a new concept of a car is shown and exposed like 5 to 7 years before it's actually produced. So a car manufacturer will do one car, one model car, and it will do the tour around the world and the different exposés and the different TV shows and the different markets, just for people to see it. People will try it. People will give the feedback. Then the company will do the changes and launches the final car after like 5 years. So the idea is to have the feedback without spending the money. So imagine if so we talked about chocolate, which is fairly cheap, right? But imagine if a car manufacturer starts automatically for uh, like creating hundreds of thousands of cars without insurance that the people will buy them. So that's really risky on a business level and reckless. So that's the idea. That's how people, or car manufacturer in this case, do prototype cars, put them for years actually in exposés and everything to get the feedback from the potential clients, and then they launch the final model. So that's the idea of a prototype. It's to get the feedback without the risk of losing the money, losing reputation, losing the time. Simple sketches can be again for cars, like how cars are sketched before they are actually made on 3D models. Handmade constructions, you can actually handmake certain things. For example, mechanic parts, you can display them. I don't know, it can be in wood, it can be in metal, plastic, 3D printed, regardless. Like it can be, or 3D printed, it isn't necessarily handmade, but it can be manually shown or showcased. For example, if I'm looking for a certain mechanical piece, I will recognize it just from the form of it. Okay, if someone comes to me, okay, this is the piece you need. Here you can at least see how it looks like and its dimension and how it functions. Just by seeing the handmade construct, I can understand the value of it. I don't have to see it in a box and in a fancy advertisement for me to know that's the piece that I'm looking for. So sometimes even a handmade construction, sorry, can be enough to show the value. Role plays, acting out interaction, so you can literally act out how your product works. It's totally okay. Like as you see, in fact, I have an example in this regard, acting out how product functions. So videos can be a prototype. In fact, the videos are the prototype for movies, for example. So um, a trailer is actually a prototype. So a product isn't the movie isn't launched yet, right? So they launch the trailer, they get the feedback. In some cases they actually adjust. In fact, recently, if you watch like the animated stuff, Sonic the Hedgehog, so they launched, I don't know if anyone like recognize it, but they launched the trailer, and people weren't big fans of the initial design of Sonic because it was really awful. And also it's like a really big thing to have this character animated on the first time. So people were enraged about how it looked. So the company got the feedback, they adjusted the movie, and then they then launched it again with the actual model, with a better model, and the movie was really successful. In fact, it's getting like a second part two, I think, soon. So that's an example. If the movie launched directly without the trailer, with a really bad design, it will have never recovered from it. But the prototype, which is the trailer, saved the movie because it gave the users the information they needed to know to make a decision whether or not this movie is bad or good. And for them, it was really awful. So the company needed to change, and they changed, and they changed also how people perceive the movie. And now it's actually like a box office a hit. So yeah, another type of prototypes is charts and graphs. So in things that can't be presented in a like, visual way, charts and graphs can be really handy because, for example, like we said earlier, business plan, you can't really demonstrate a prototype of a business plan or a digital marketing strategy. You can't really showcase it in a sample way. But what you can do is you can show graphs and charts of projected value. So we can get you this kind of benefit within this amount of time. This is what will happen to your clientele, your business, your whatever. So you can sample with the value that you can provide to that business. That's charts and graphs in use case, and other like there's endless ways to sample as long as they show the value of your product. Like 3D printing is one of them. So yeah, there is endless ways of creating prototypes. So here I have a really a really silly example of how to act act out a prototype. So we have an app concept that's being pitched, and the app is really weird. So you have a character, an avatar in the middle of the screen. Once you press it, there's a music playing, and once you press it, it changes the dance. It starts dancing, and then each time you press it, it changes the dance, and then just yeah, it's just weird. But to get an understanding on how people are willing to minimize the cost of creating a prototype. So let's see. Yeah, so, whoops. Um, so you can see there, like that's an example of how minimalistic a certain prototype can be. So just a drawn out phone or device on a paper, and they acted out how the app functions. So you can see to which extent people can go to prototype things without spending or without wasting resources. So here are some of the criteria of a prototype, or what's for exactly. So it allows for ideas to be expanded and explained. Again, it's an easier way for you to explain your idea, and also to get feedback on it, right? Also to expand it, as in you can discover, as you do the prototype, you can discover areas of expansion. So it's always interesting to do prototypes because it's closer to the final product than the brainstorming phase. Helps find flaws and holes. Of course, it will be easier for people to give feedback based on what they see rather than what you say. And not about perfection, it means to earn more about the user needs. So it's always about um, testing with the user and being close to what they exactly need and what they ask for. It's not about you showing the best version of the product or the best design or the best performance. It's about the minimum value, the minimum cost, but the maximum value, or enough value for the user to understand what you are trying to deliver, right? So, okay, this is also a workshop that is done face to face. Sadly, we can't do it here. Maybe next time or another time. But yeah, that should be it for the prototyping phase. So far so good. So far so good. Explain simple. This is from earlier. Thanks, Malik. Also, I think there is like 2 minutes left in the actual scheduled time, so I don't want to push it since I'm the one who came late. If some people have to go or you guys are restricted in time, then no problem. If you guys have 15 more minutes or 10 more minutes, it will be cool, so we can finish this up. But yeah, if you can, then no problem. 10 more minutes? 15? Yes, no, maybe, jot. Okay, perfect. اوكي متاع نور حسيتني بالذنب متاع اوكي به. اوكي. désolé Noor, désolé. No worries. Okay, let's go. Don't waste your time. If you have questions again, or if you have ideas, Zeda, وهي حاجة ما حكيناش فيها. If you have ideas you want to discuss, I can actually help you with those, Zeda. كان فما شكون عنده idea, he's not sure whether or not to go forward with it, or how to do a prototype for it, or how to do the process for it. I will stay actually. I think I still got like some more time to answer your questions. So حتى نكملوا last step. Then if you have more questions, I'll be there for you for sure. Okay, so let's finish testing. It's really straightforward. So okay, now on 5 prototype, right? So كانوا عندنا 5 idées من ideation, خدنا 5 prototype. Now we're gonna test them in a live environment. So by live environment, I mean an environment where there is the users that you are targeting, and there is the problem that you are targeting also. So it's not like you're testing it with your friends or your developers or your designer, whatever. You test it with the people who are going to buy it eventually or use it, or where the problem lies, right? So just do it. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work by Thomas Edison. So this is a quote that embodies the mindset of a tester. So we are not testing to reach a point where you say, okay, it's perfect. Now I'm not going to test ever again because it's perfect. No, you're testing to figure out what doesn't work, actually, to avoid the mistakes and to eliminate the chances of you to fail. So each time you find out something bad when you test, is is a chance for you, or less chance for you to fail, because you avoided that mistake, or you avoided that problem. So you test to always like know what's wrong. It's not to get the validation that you're right. Not testing to prove false. Sorry, not testing to prove false or possibly true. It's an attempt to grow the idea and increase success. So again, the same mindset. You're not testing with the like mindset of, okay, I'm gonna validate my product. You're testing with in iterations. In fact, every company keeps iterating testing. It's something iterative. It doesn't stop. It's always happening with the goal to increase the chances of success and decrease the chances of failure, and to detect problems. So you always test everything, regardless of the state of your product. Even if you have like really simple sections or things you're trusting that they are functional, they don't have to be tested. For example, if you're creating a game and you think your first levels are fine, for example, even though you are currently developing like level 50, but it's always okay to still check that level 1 or level 2, or really generic things, your basic thing, because that's the area where you should detect problems, because if you don't, then you may lose value. So a good example of this is phone manufacturer Nokia. So Nokia, I think 2010 or around that area, 25, 2005, I think around that area, she was as a company, it was leading the phone seller sales around the world. She was like 3 4 times away from the competition, I think even more. I don't recall the exact stats, but remember the curve pretty well. So Nokia was 5 to 4 times away from the competition. I think it was Motorola and Sony Ericsson, like the third and second. So like there was no competition for Nokia, so it was a free market. Then suddenly there were a little change in behavior that took place. So people were slowly starting to use touch screens. Um, they got around with Chinese phones, then it sort of spread out to other phones, actual phones. And Nokia didn't really detect that change in customer behavior, didn't detect that people were really having fun using touchscreens, and it became like a desirable experience. It became the next big thing. It's similar to what CDs did to cassettes, right? So it's the next big thing, and that people are finding more value in the same problem, like using the same device, right? But they are finding more value using touchscreens. So Nokia didn't detect that, and they kept working on their phones, like the standard phones. I think it was like Series N, if you guys recall. If there is some boomer like me in you guys, like N80. 98 or something like that. So it's a series of standard phone. So they kept working on that series, and within a year, Nokia went from the top seller, I think, out of the top 10, uh, like that in 1 year. So just by not detecting such obvious change in the customer behavior, that they could have just tested users to ask them, for example, what are you looking for in a good smartphone or in good phone before smartphone? Then they could have easily detected that their phones don't answer what the market's looking for anymore. But since they ignored that, the market also ignored them, and they lost all the added value, all the value that they have uh, really quickly. So it's really important to test everything all the time. So even your main feature that you trust a lot and think that is unique in the market, you should actually always test that first, because if you lose that value, you will lose all of your value as a product, because your main feature is being jeopardized or being replaced in the market. So that's why it's important to test everything all the time. And yeah, so this is pretty much a short take on design thinking. Again, 5 steps: empathize. You discover the problem or the environment throughout the information of the users within that environment or suffering from that problem. Now you have the information, you're going to define the section in which you're going to work on. Where that section usually varies, depends on your resources, on your also what you are willing to take and work with. But usually it's a part of the bigger problem. Now you move to ideate when you're going to brainstorm a lot of solutions, but eventually can pick up to 5, but even more if you want to. Now you're going to prototype those 5 potential ideas or solutions in order to test them with the user and get his feedback on which one is actually the best one that solves the problem. This is pretty much the flow with design thinking, really in a minimalistic way, but in a functional way. This is what you need to take. This is what you need to apply. And also this is what you need to work with in your competition. So yeah, all around, if you have any questions, I'm here. So let me stop sharing really quickly so you can, yeah, so let me get back here. If you have any questions, you feel free to hit me up now, later. I think I'm always accessible as long as I'm actually online on checking up my inbox or email. Also, I'm always, this is something I really love doing, by the way. It's not uh, like just a job or just a professional aspect of what I do. I really love design and product design in general. So you'll find a lot of things that you might find interesting within this topic, and you can reach out to me if you ever felt like this is a career path that you want to consider or know more about, for sure. I think Iman can hand you my social
Mhm.
handles if you ever felt curious to hop in. I share some nice memes from some time to time, so it could be worth. And yeah, so it was again a pleasure. If you have any questions, I'm all ears. Also, one thing I'm actually starting to do, which is trying to actually do this on a more professional level. So I'm actually preparing. By professional, I mean I'm trying to create an actual independent, available, and free for everyone course for design thinking. I'm not trying to make it paid or anything. I actually want to make it for clubs, for associations, and everything. So wish me luck on that. It will be really cool. It should be something really interactive, and maybe you guys can be the first ones I can share it with. You can help me out with one thing if you can go to LinkedIn, and there is like the skills section in LinkedIn when there is like the different skills and everything. You can take the things that you felt like it could be giving you value in. So I'm trying to spike those up because those can affect later on, like my network and everything. That's the only thing I could take in return of as a favor from you guys. Sorry if I was late or so earlier, but it was out of my hands. I really had to. And yeah, the endorsement thing. And not just you don't have to leave a feedback. Just endorse a certain skill. You don't have to type like a feedback or anything. Yeah, so, and yeah, hopefully you'll hear about it when I do that. The course is going to be available. It's going to be specifically for clubs and associations, because I also was, again, very active, very a part of so many clubs and associations back in my day. So yeah, it was I'm so happy that I was part of this. Hopefully I get you guys some good information. Hopefully you find this not so boring. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mr. Anas.
Mhm.
So, asking for your email.
Can you make me a minute somewhere here? I don't have the idea how it might have. Okay, sure. Nice. By the way, my social stuff is on Tradi, like everywhere, I think. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, even though I'm not really that active on social media, but I'm kind of active, like once a couple of weeks, kind of active.
So, thank you, Mr. Anas.
Mhm.
Thank you for
All good.
everything.
Then if you have